Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp.
And I'm Matt Schlapp. It's great to be with you.
It's nice to be with you too. I feel like I haven't been with you for a while.
Mercy, as you all know, Mercy abandoned me for a while, but for very good reasons, and we're happy to have her back.
Well, I hope that Schlapp did a good job hosting the show. I'm sure you carried the
ratings are down.
Did they really?
But we're having a V-shaped recovery with your return. Okay, so it's going to all be good now.
Fantastic.
And we're really privileged to have one of these governors you're reading a lot about, because the great state of Texas is open for business. Every day you cannot avoid open up the newspaper, turning on TV, and reading about a business that is moving to Texas because they have the right kind of policies. Governor Greg Abbott, thanks for joining us on CPAC Now.
Great to be with you, Matt and Mercedes. It's an honor. You know, you were talking about all these businesses. Here, let me tell you something amazing that happened during last year, the year of COVID, and that is Texas once again led the nation in the number of new corporate relocations to the state. We had Tesla come here. We had Oracle move its headquarters here. We had Hewlett-Packard Enterprise move its headquarters here. But Texas ranked #1 for economic development. We also amazingly also grew internationally. Before COVID, Texas, if it were its own country, we would have ranked 10th in the entire world for the 10th largest economy. Today, Texas now ranks 9th largest in the entire world for the gross domestic products. So Texas is growing very rapidly. Our business sector is doing fantastic. And one reason is because we are and have been open 100%, no mask mandate.
Let me say one thing based on that as well, which is sometimes you read the statements that these companies put out about why they're going to Texas. And sometimes they're a little political in what they say because they don't want to have animosity in California, because California is now saying they'll go after everybody who leaves the state for many, many, many years. Make no mistake, the people who are moving to the red states, especially the state of Texas, are moving because you have control on your legal system. You appoint good judges. You have low taxes, and in some cases no taxes, and you have common sense regulations. And that is the 100% reason. You agree, Governor?
Well, I've heard it straight up from these CEOs that are moving here. You know, on the tax issue, one thing that they were amazed to hear is that Texas passed a constitutional amendment constitutionally banning an income tax in the state of Texas. So this is a legacy-based issue. No matter where you're going to come from, you're not going to suffer an income tax in the great state of Texas.
Well, I want to just, I know there's a lot going on, especially with this legislative session in Texas. And you've been a little busy, especially when it comes to this election bill, the Senate Bill 7, which walk us through what's in the bill. Why is it becoming this hot topic for the Democrats? As we know, the Democrats walked out of the chamber not wanting to basically finish their job, and instead kill one of your top priorities, the election bill.
So let me set it up this way, and that is, long before this session, Texas has always been very assertive with regard to making sure that we have election integrity. Before this session, we had already passed a voter ID bill. This session, we wanted to accomplish a couple of things. One is to make sure that we do more to crack down on mail-in ballot and absentee ballot fraud. Another is to have to correct some things that were done by Harris County, which is where Houston is, where they tried to impose their own election laws. As you all know, as your viewers know, the Constitution delegates to states, not local governments, the authority to write the election laws. And we had Harris County trying to write election laws. Let me give you some specifics. One is on the mail-in ballot. Harris County issued mail-in ballots to everybody in the entire county, which was completely illegal. We went to court, we got it overturned. However, we wanted to codify in our law that it is illegal for any county to mail out mail-in ballots to everybody in the entire county. Another thing that Harris County did, which was not in state law, they had 24-hour voting. The reason why that's a problem is because we have a law in the state of Texas that allows people to be poll watchers. And candidly, sometimes it may be hard to get poll watchers at 3 a.m. in the morning or 4 a.m. in the morning. And so we want to make sure that we were able to monitor every polling place. But I will tell you this, because all these talking points by the Democrats, by the liberal media, et cetera, are absolutely false as it concerns what the Texas law does. What SB 7 did, it didn't reduce the number of hours of voting. If you compare SB 7 versus existing law in the state of Texas, we added hours for people to vote. And also, if you want to talk about voter suppression, Texas has 12 days of early voting. And if you want to compare that to other states, let's say Delaware, for example, where the president votes, where they have 0 days of early voting. No one's talking about Delaware engaging in racist voter suppression, and yet they have fewer hours of voting than we have in the state of Texas. But let me make this point very clear, because the media likes to say, and the Democrats like to say, oh, this is a solution in search of a problem. A federal judge appointed by Barack Obama in the state of Texas issued a legal decision, and in that legal decision, the federal judge wrote this, and that is, voter fraud in Texas occurs, quote, in abundance as it concerns absentee voting. And so a federal judge sent by Barack Obama says, yes, voter fraud occurs in abundance. Also, the Obama-Biden administration, they saw voter fraud taking place in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. So they sent to Texas a team of FBI officers, as well as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, and they arrested and prosecuted people who were participating in a scheme that used cocaine to buy votes through the absentee balloting process in Texas. So voter fraud is real, and in Texas, we intend to shut it down and make sure that we end cheating and illegal voting at the ballot box, while also ensuring we have plenty of hours and plenty of days for people to be able to cast their vote legally.
It's strange, you know, CNN and MSNBC and these other liberal national outlets, they loved covering when there was a Republican elected to the U.S. House of Representatives who was eventually denied from actually occupying that seat because his campaign was accused of voter fraud. So they'll cover the story when it's Republicans, but when it's Democrats, they don't want to seem to cover it. And they seem to have this idea that it's all about a racist intent of the Republican Party. I know you pretty well. I know a lot of these statewide elected officials in Texas. There is absolutely no evidence of voter suppression due to someone's skin color or heritage in Texas at all. And if there was, you'd probably be all over fixing it. Am I right?
Well, not only are you right, but there's facts to prove what you're saying. As you all know, I was the Attorney General before I was the governor. And as Attorney General, I prosecuted voter fraud across the state of Texas. It probably will not surprise you to learn that most of the voter fraud complaints that were filed by Democrats, and they were filed against other Democrats in primaries and things like that. So this is really a problem the Democrats want to see solved also. There's nothing racist about this. These are all race neutral policies, but as I pointed out also, the policies that we have in the state of Texas, even under SB 7, are policies that still provide everybody more than ample time to vote, far more time than in many other states. So you mentioned that, and I can't remember if you mentioned, but I think you did, that it did not pass during our session. You may know, we will be having a special session in the state of Texas where this election integrity bill will be brought back up, and I do expect it to pass.
Governor, you said you do expect the bill to pass, but do you really think the Democrats are going to come to the table?
I do. Listen, and they were talking about this as they were walking out. They were able to make a point because of the way that things worked, but I think that the time clock will be handled more effectively in a way that this will get across the finish line.
Governor, the southern border, I think politically is one of the most toxic things that Joe Biden and the Democrats have to try to defend. What are you doing today to try to do everything Texas can do to make the best of a terrible situation?
I will tell you what we're doing quite literally today, but I will first tell you what we've been doing during the entirety of the Biden administration. Because the Biden administration came in and repealed the policies that President Trump had put in place that had proven to be very effective at reducing border crossings. He repealed the Remain in Mexico policy, the Title 42 policy, as well as the repatriation policy that President Trump had put in place, as well as just Trump's approach, and that is the border was closed, and to the converse, President Biden says the border is open. We've seen a massive influx. As an easy example, in April of last year, when President Trump was still president, there were 17,000 people who'd come across the border. This April, there was a 1,000% increase with 170,000 people coming across the border. So what I did as governor, I put together what we call Operation Lone Star, where we deployed 1,000 Texas Department of Public Safety officers, as well as the National Guard, to the border to do the federal government's job and to begin to secure the border. And they've made well over 1,000 arrests, and they've apprehended more than 33,000 illegal immigrants coming across the border. However, because the Biden administration has so abandoned the state of Texas as some frontier outpost that they are ignoring now, we have to step up and do even more. So what happened this week, 34 counties that are along the Texas border, they asked me to declare a state disaster in their counties because of people coming across the border. Most time when you hear governors declare a disaster, it's because of some weather event like a hurricane coming in. This is the first time I'm ever aware of where a disaster had to be declared because of border crossings, which I did. I'm going to be going there next week, working with sheriffs and the county officials in those 34 counties, where we are going to increase our efforts even more. There's going to be some very big announcements next week about what Texas is doing to step up and assist these local counties, including increasing the number of arrests and putting people in jail. Now, we're going to make it very clear. People coming across the border, you're not getting a free ride to do whatever you want to do in this country. It's not catch and release. We're going to arrest you, put you in jail for a long time, and people are going to find that Texas is not the right place to cross the border into.
So let me ask you, has the Vice President Kamala Harris, have you spoken to her recently?
Not at all. So during this entire time, neither the president nor the vice president, who of course is the border czar, have contacted us. We did talk to Secretary Mayorkas, as well as some of people who work under Secretary Mayorkas. And I got to tell you, I've never seen anybody who seems to be so clueless or either misrepresentative about what's going on. I'm sure you've heard Secretary Mayorkas say the border is closed and there's a reduction in border crossings. Nothing could be more false. And so I don't know if they really don't know the facts or if they're really trying to misrepresent the facts to our fellow Americans, but they're wrong on the border. But Texas is not going to tolerate it anymore. We're going to step up and do our own job to make sure we're going to do the federal government's job to secure the border.
So Texas, this big, huge border where, you know, so much of a big percentage of the problem is, are you really telling us that the Vice President of the United States and the President of the United States actually aren't calling you semi-regularly to see how they can help coordinate?
Never.
Wow. So that you have this question about what then happens to all of the people who don a uniform and have to try to keep order in the communities in your state and along the border and make these arrests. The problem therein dovetails with what Democrats want to get done all across this country, and that's defund people who wear uniform, public safety officers. What is your approach on that in Texas? How do we make these brave men and women get the support they need?
You know, one of the worst things, saddest things that we have witnessed across America over the past year are all these efforts to defund police. You see what goes on in Portland and Seattle. You see what goes on in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and some other cities like that. I wish I could tell you that it wasn't happening in Texas. However, it did happen in Texas with the city of Austin. The city of Austin defunded police. And we're not going to tolerate that as a policy in the state of Texas. And so earlier this week, I signed laws that the legislature passed where we are supporting our law enforcement, not defunding or demonizing them, but we're putting real teeth into it because here are the reasonings. And that is, no one should be taxed by a city that's not doing their responsibility to keep their community safe. And so we put caps or limits saying that cities that defund police cannot raise property taxes, sales taxes, fees, or anything like that. Their revenue stream is going to be cut off. But more than that, we also address their annexation powers. Now, cities have annexation powers, and the city of Austin, for example, is for a period of 10 years will not be able to annex any part of their extraterritorial jurisdiction anymore. But more than that, anybody who has been annexed for the past 30 years can vote to de-annex themselves from the city of Austin. The city of Austin is going to be losing all kinds of revenue for their boneheaded decision to defund the police. But I want you to know that we are not, as a state, going to abandon the safety of the people in Austin, Texas, because the Texas Department of Public Safety is going to step up and provide the safety and security that people in Austin deserve. And the way it's going to be paid for, we're going to take the money, the sales tax revenue that city of Austin would be getting, and take that and pay that to the Texas Department of Public Safety to provide that police.
As someone who lived in Austin during the 2000 presidential campaign, I cannot think of a city that needs more cops than Austin, Texas. No offense. I think you're doing exactly the right thing.
I do think one of the things I want to bring up also is the handling of COVID. Obviously, you were called some names by the current president, President Joe Biden, basically called a Neanderthal for your actions in getting rid of the lockdown, opening up your economy, getting rid of the mask mandates, really, I think, being very bold to make these choices. Give us an update on how are things going with the pandemic and its impact in Texas.
So Mercedes, months ago when we opened up 100% and eliminated masks, that day the president called me a Neanderthal for Neanderthal thinking, but also others, the mainstream media, Democrats like Beto O'Rourke said that I issued a death warrant for our fellow Texans. And then what happened after we opened up 100%, every day our case numbers went down, the positivity rate went down, hospitalizations went down, and fatalities went down. And then it was about 10 days ago or so where we had 0 deaths related to COVID. And all those numbers have remained at record lows here recently. And you know what? I haven't received any apology yet from Joe Biden or any of these critics who said that it would be a disaster, because COVID has continued to improve, meaning go away, after we opened up, after we removed the mask mandate, after we got back to business. That's what America needs to do. We need to put aside all of these restrictions and open up fully across the entire United States of America.
That's great, and it's one of the reasons why we're bringing CPAC to Texas. We had a great CPAC in Florida after the state of Maryland, even with the Republican governor, said that having CPAC would be a health hazard to the people of the swamp area. So we went to Florida, and while we're in Florida, we heard the great news that you were opening up the Texas economy, and we're coming to Texas, and we know a lot of people from around the country will be coming to Texas, because unfortunately, a lot of people who are in blue states, they still don't even know if their schools are going to be open in the fall.
Right. Well, in Texas, our schools are going to be fully open with no masks. In the fall, it's going to be ordinary school. But I will say that you come into Texas, which we are very much looking forward to, it could pose a health risk. It could pose a health risk for the future of liberals who are trying to hijack the Lone Star State.
Hey, listen, Governor, you got to get up with the speed. You got to get up to speed with the times. They are not liberals. I actually think we're all the liberals now. We're the tolerant ones. They're the socialists.
Exactly. You know, and they run as socialists in the state of Texas, and they try to enact socialist policies. And with CPAC and others, we're going to make sure that they have no opportunity to win the Lone Star State.
Real quick question on energy independence. As we know, the federal government and the Biden administration, they've taken on aggressive actions to basically put a lot of pressure on the fossil fuel industry, I think causing a lot of issues from the energy for the energy industry. What is Texas doing to make sure that our oil and natural gas industries can prosper and that you can create jobs in that industry?
So we're having nothing of their Green New disaster policies in the Lone Star State. And so we enacted several laws that I'm going to be signing into law. One is the counter to what California has done. In California, they are no longer allowing new homes or office buildings to have access to natural gas as a fuel. In Texas, we have a mandate now saying that anybody who builds a home or builds a building, they can access natural gas or any type of fuel. On top of that, we passed laws that are counter to all of these pro-environment divestment programs where they divest investments into businesses like the oil and gas sector. So Texas is going to divest from any company or any entity that is trying to divest from the oil and gas sector. And also, I issued an executive order ordering every agency in the state of Texas to identify any Biden administration policy that tries to limit the production or transmission of oil and gas in the state of Texas so that we can immediately take legal action. And this is something I have experience with because when I was the Attorney General, I set an all-time record in the number of lawsuits filed against Barack Obama, 31 lawsuits against the Obama administration. Many of those were related to challenges against the Obama EPA. And we are ready to continue that legacy of litigation against an administration that is overreaching its authority, trying to crack down on the energy sector in the Lone Star State.
Well, Governor, we look forward to seeing you in July.
Look, we've got our CPAC Texas.
There you go. Good looking.
We'll make sure you get one, Governor.
We're going to have one send your way. We're looking forward to being with you. We're so excited to be in the great state of Texas. There's so many great activists across the state. And what states like Texas, and Florida, and Tennessee have to do is provide the hope for the rest of the country that it's still in this kind of lockdown mentality. And so we appreciate your leadership on all of these important questions, sir.
And we look forward to seeing you. And remember, bring your gun because we are now a constitutional carry state.
That's right.
Please don't tell Governor Hogan. Now, that would really get the man upset. We appreciate you joining us.